that you can fall in love with some of these new techs and figure out how to leverage and exploit them to make you a value-added asset to your employer and in your career, you're going to get left behind.
Welcome to the 1% Edge podcast, where we dive into the journeys of extraordinary guests committed to getting 1% better every day. For today's hot topic, performing in turbulent times, and how we really need to change, or we need to make sure we look at change as being constant these days. And to help us out with that topic, I'm honored to have Julie Thomas, CEO of Value Selling Associates, two-time author, and someone that I've known for the last 17 years. Welcome to the show, Julie.
Thrilled to be here, Carlos. Thanks for inviting me in.
Awesome. All right. Let's describe the topic or the situation first. What do you mean by selling in turbulent times? And is it industry specific, or can we look at it across industries as well?
So turbulent times just means that you are selling in an environment of uncertainty. So it could be uncertainty in the industry, or it could be uncertainty in your geography or the economic environment. Clearly, the only time that I can recall a consistent disruption to business that was truly global in recent times was the 2020 pandemic, where in February of 2020, anybody who had an active pipeline quickly realized by the end of March of 2020, that pipeline likely went poof in the night unless you sold Purell or face masks or were selling for Zoom, right? Everything else went poof in the night. So, but turbulence doesn't have to be that dramatic. For manufacturing companies today in the United States, they're in turbulent times because of the economic impact of the potential tariffs that are going to be hitting our manufacturing and our supply chain. Or it could be industry regulation or industry changes. For some of us, it might even be the weather in certain regions of the world or country right now that is impacting the priorities facing the customers that we have.
It's I was going to use the word funny, but it's not funny, because as I ask you this question, I think about the people I talk to around the globe, and some are like, "Hey, these are great times," but let's face it, some of them are like, "We're at the brink of World War III and everything else." So whatever's going on there, at least from a financial perspective, especially in a lot of tech companies, technology companies you deal with, cash is not cheap these days. So companies are under pressure to be profitable, and that's another headwind or pressure, which makes selling harder. In fact, it's, as you were talking, I kind of think about the last 10 years. COVID was kind of a gut punch, but then we kind of found our way through it, and we've, if we really look back over the last 20 years, we've had a really pretty good time. There's been a lot of growth at all costs across the market. It's now we're kind of pivoting, or there's concerns. I don't know what it is, but there's this, hey, over the last couple of years, especially as interest rates went up, deals fell under more scrutiny as well. And I see that all part of this turbulent time, right? It's tougher just to get your deals. If you expect to just show up, show a demo, and get a proposal closed, good luck.
Well, no question. Because what happens when companies are operating in an uncertain environment is they become very risk averse. And risk aversion manifests itself in let's slow down our decisions, let's slow down our purchases. The fight for capital gets tighter in an organization. And therefore, as a sales executive, it's no longer just about the features of your product. And SaaS is a great example. For the last 10 years, many led with a complete product-led focus. If I can get you into the demo, you will fall in love with this product. And the outcomes were assumed, and the impact was assumed. And the burden was on the user to go find the money. and they were finding it from existing budgets or creating new budgets, however that was. But the money was flowing and change was not scrutinized. I think in times, and it doesn't even have to be crisis or turbulence, but times of uncertainty, people tend to slow down and take their time because we don't know what's going to happen in the next 3 months, 6 months, whether it's the geopolitical environment that we are in, the economic environment that we're in. If you talk to 10 experts, you're likely going to get 10 different opinions. And it's difficult to make strategic decisions in an environment that's uncertain. And that puts a much bigger burden on sales reps to be much more deliberate and change potentially their approach to how they're going to support their prospective customers and their existing customers.
Got it. You also, as we're preparing for this, you also talked about how change is constant. And I guess some listeners would go, oh, of course it is. It's always changing. But does it feel like the pace of change is really dramatically changing more these days, especially with introducing of new tech like AI?
Yeah, no question. I think that is something that is also leading to uncertainty. The pace of change is enormous. I mean, just over 2 years ago, generative AI was not in our vocabulary. It just wasn't. And literally that's been just over 2 years. Now, if you are a professional and you aren't at least thinking about how generative AI can enable you to be more productive, you have probably missed the boat. And it doesn't mean that it's going to replace your job, but it may replace some of the tasks that you're doing in your job and free you up for more critical thinking, strategic types of activities. And now we're getting into agentified AI. Again, 12 months ago, I don't think that many people were talking about agentified AI and the fact that I can create agents that do certain tasks for me that are repetitive, potentially time consuming. And again, it's going to be part of my workflow going forward to leverage that. And so the pace of change is massive. So what does that mean for the individual? Well, if you are not in the mindset that you need to be a continuous learner, you'll get left behind, in my opinion. If you are of the mindset that what worked 5 years ago will continue to work indefinitely, you've probably already been left behind. If you can't find something that you can fall in love with some of these new techs and figure out how to leverage and exploit them to make you a value added asset to your employer and in your career, you're going to get left behind. And so it's overwhelming because for a lot of people, it's like, where do I start? Yes, I'm intrigued by this and interested in it, but what can I do to leverage it to become that next generation employee that is a value added asset to my organization? Most of the companies that I work with, their number one asset is their human capital. And that human capital has to be continuously invested in, continuously trained and untrained and retrained and coached to the next level of performance. Systemically, it won't happen on its own. It has to be deliberate and intentional for all of us.
All right. So as we describe the situation, any advice or what might be, some of the actions that heads of sales, heads of marketing, CEOs can take out there to try to address this, to be more productive or have an edge over other companies that are struggling against this headwind?
So I think the first thing that any organization needs to do is assess and self-assess where are they at. Where are they at? What's going well? What's not going well? And then figure out what we can learn. I think what we learned in the most recent couple of years, and my understanding is Harvard Business School is now teaching a course on this, is agility is essential. And that's my ability to assess what's going on, figure out where I need to go, and quickly put a plan in place to get there and be adaptable along the way, that if a roadblock pops up on that path that I thought yesterday was the right path, I can quickly go to plan B and continue to execute without losing momentum. And I think organizations have to look at, am I agile? Some organizations aren't, because they've become huge behemoth organizations that consensus is required for any decision, and that takes time. I'm working with a client right now that has 10 different voices on rewriting the memo that's going to go out and announce what's going to happen in 5 or 6 weeks with an initiative they're about to roll out. Well, it's on one hand, it's important that everybody's bought into the message. On the other hand, it's kind of ridiculous that it's taking a month to write a 500-word memo. That is not agility.
Yeah, it's another example of this is, like even buying AI tech these days, organizations are like, hey, I'm worried about the risk. Am I getting exposure here? So they put it through the paces. Well, if it takes you 3 to 9 months to just evaluate the tech, guess what? By the time you come out with a yes at the other end, that tech that you initially evaluated, it has completely changed. It's on version 3 down the road because it's moving so fast. And I'm not trying to push people into risky decisions, but you really got to look at your processes and how long things are taking, because like AI tech is moving so fast, you're getting left behind.
No, that's true. And the reality is, the bigger the organization, the more bureaucratic those evaluations become. Many components of those evaluations are critical to make sure that the organization is not at risk. And in certain industries, they're really critical. Financial services, industries with significant personal data that they might be looking at, whether it's credit card processing, healthcare companies, what have you. But many of them, they've just built this bureaucracy almost as a barrier to agility and progress. And I think that's going to get rethought in a age of this constant tech, of this accelerated waves of technology, because they're going to be 2 or 3 versions behind by the time the version they're looking at gets approved to go through. And it's a challenge. And I don't necessarily have all the answers, but I do know that there are times when these evaluations have taken on a life of their own, and they've lost track of what the outcomes are, or the business requirements, or what the technology is actually intended to do, and gone off on a number of tangents. And I don't think that's serving the organization well in the long run.
All right. So part of your advice, have this agile mindset or culture so that you can quickly, assess and adapt. What are some other, recommendations?
Well, I think when you think of organizations, and if technology is changing and it's changing the behavior of the people leveraging that technology, we also need to understand that people change at different rates and under different circumstances. So I think as a leader of an organization going through massive change, you have to have tremendous empathy to meet people where they're at. Some of them are afraid. Some of them are stubborn. And some of them, especially when it comes to sales, have been rewarded for not changing because the customer bought anyways, and therefore aren't bought in that they need to reassess and reevaluate and maybe redeploy some of their skills and behaviors. So we have to meet that with empathy, but at the same time, we have to create organizations that are accountable. And accountability comes from really understanding what are our expectations. Are we inspecting those expectations on a regular basis? Are we providing support around those, whether it is tools, coaching, training, to make sure that people understand what is expected of them and they have a certain level of competence in those new skills, and then measuring the outputs. Like, is it making a difference? And I think sometimes organizations fall down on that measuring the outcomes or the inspection. They're great in the front end of the process. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to train you. We're going to coach you. We're going to put a quarter in you and off you go. And then we never talk about it again. That is not a culture of accountability. And I think in these constant changing, we have to hold people accountable to some of those skills and behaviors and be really clear on what those expectations are.
Yeah, when you were describing it, it's kind of the dilemma that I sometimes see with enablement organizations. It's like, all right, we planned the rollout, we rolled it out, everyone went through it, we got good reviews, we're done. It's like, no, but then what happened? Did they actually use it?
Yeah.
We can't just say it's on them. And if they're not using it, how are we course correcting, going back to your, being adaptable to the situation, right? It's not a matter of just getting the message out. It's a matter of, did they absorb it, that they understand it, and that they put it into practice? And these days it seems like instead of less, training and human touch and engagement, we actually probably need more in a way. And it just seems to be the right format for the right types of learners out there.
Well, absolutely. I think a trap that we've all fallen into, whether it's enablement or learning and development, or even at times sales leadership, we spend so much time focusing on the inputs, the activity, the front end of the training. We lose sight of the outputs. And the only reason you train, and I'm not talking about general knowledge acquisition, I'm talking about training on skills and behaviors, is because you expect it to make a difference in the results. And, wouldn't it be great, Carlos, if you or I could go to the gym one time and everything would be fixed? We'd be miraculously fit and in shape, and that would continue into the future. In my experience, it doesn't work that way. I have to be not only disciplined, which means I'm going to do it even when I don't want to do it, and I'm going to do it because I know I need to do it, not because somebody's telling me to do it, and consistent, but I also need to be persistent. And persistence, in the gym says, hey, I was up too late last night. I don't want to get up when the alarm goes off at 5:30, or it's raining outside. I don't want to go out. It's raining outside. I'll go tomorrow because the sun's supposed to shine and it won't be such a misery getting over there, or whatever it is. We need that discipline, we need that consistency, and we need that persistency. That happens over time. It doesn't happen just one time. And we tend to focus on the one time in sales training. Well, I saw you do it once, so you're good. Or we experienced that win, and so you're good. And then we assume that that is going to create the right habits. Often it does not. I often say, even the most common sense approach, for which you and I are bought into, is the value selling framework. It's not common practice. And sometimes we have very senior people even say, hey, this is great, but it's almost too basic. And I'm like, that's great. Are they doing it though? You can't get to the advanced lesson until you've mastered the foundational basics. And everybody's looking for a silver bullet. Everybody's looking for a silver bullet. The 8-minute abs. Like, okay, that's great. I don't need to go to a gym for 6 minutes. I'll just do the 8-minute ab video. So it's an interesting conundrum our human nature is we're always looking for the shortcut, and often that shortcut doesn't exist. What they say is, isn't it amazing that the harder we work, the luckier we get? And it's doing the right things at the right time that generates opportunities for us to move forward.
I'm laughing a little on the inside because I told Julie before we started out how I'm back at the gym and I got a trainer, and it's like, as you were talking, I'm thinking to myself, it's like going to your trainer one time and going through a workout, and then 6 months later then coming back to you and going, you coming back to the trainer and going, hey, it didn't work. And then he goes, well, did you go back to the gym and work out? No. did you change your eating habits? No. But, I didn't get the results. That's my complaint. So, well, you didn't take any of the following up actions to get the results, right? Going to the gym once and doing it right one time doesn't make you perfect 6 months down the road. It's that repetition to make it part of your habit, your DNA, your sales culture as a company that makes a big difference, because then it becomes part of who you are. And one of the things in what we do that I try to get people to think about is, think about this as a framework for your conversations. Do you want to help people? Do you want to have better communications? Do you want to understand them better? Do you want to create lifelong relationships with people, not just because you bought them a beer, but because you actually helped them with something really complex and had amazing outcomes for them? Well, all that takes effort. It doesn't just happen because you took them out for a beer and sold them a product. You got to have some core things within you, empathy you talked about, even just pure curiosity and a willingness to wanting to understand them better. As more tech is thrown at this stuff, Julie, in some ways, people, well, I can automate that. I can make that easier. And for the people that just, pushed out the same old email every day, the reality is we can automate that. We didn't need you for that. But how is, AI and tools like that going to impact the way people communicate when they do have to meet them face to face or over a video conference or really engage with the customer? Can the tools help these organizations really improve those behaviors over time?
I think so. I think AI is gonna. There's a number of use cases for AI right now that I think are becoming increasingly popular for especially the B2B sales rep. One of them is assistance in content creation and writing, right? Whether it's that email, give me 3 different versions of an email. Here's what the objective of that is. Make it pithy, make it hard hitting, and then let me push them out and see which one gets better response time, or which one leads to an appointment, or which one leads to the outcome or the call to action that I'm hoping it leads to. Maybe it's just download a document. Maybe it's visit a podcast with Carlos, whatever that might be. So I think that's one of the use cases for AI. But it still requires human intervention. I mean, AI is great for that ideation, maybe a starting place, but I think the rep that doesn't take that, make sure it has their voice, their point of view, and really reflects something that they would write, will become unauthentic when they show up in person, because it won't match. Number 2, I think another big use case that we're seeing is the call preparation. From the beginning of time, as far as I've been in sales, and I've been in sales for a long, long time, the mantra has been know your customer, do your research. Way back in the day, it was very difficult to do research. Like, we had to read the financial reports. You had to you had to literally do research. Maybe it was go to the Chamber of Commerce if you were a territory rep in a certain geography and get a list of the companies that might be headquartered in that region, or some other things. And then the next wave of research came with the internet that was like, oh my goodness, companies publish a website and I don't have to call my broker to get a copy of the 10K and the earnings report. I can actually look at it online and all of that. Well, now with AI and research tools, I can get the synopsis of what I need to know like that. I can use tools like LinkedIn Sales Navigator and say, hey, because I sell the value selling framework sales methodology, and I'm talking to Carlos at XYZ company, what are the 3 top ways that I might be able to help them? And it can help give me a point of view and a starting point to really make me more effective in that call. But what it can't do is make that call for me, not for the types of stuff that our clients are selling, where they want to know the people behind the logo. They want to establish trust. They want accountability to help from the people they're working with, to help them mitigate that they're making a bad business decision for their organizations, which could be career limiting for them. So I think that because of AI, how we show up when we have those meetings with our customers is more important than ever, because all of these tools should help us better prepare. And all of these tools should help us get to the heart of the matter faster with the prospect to assess, is there an opportunity here or not? And at the end of the day, salespeople are there to serve their customers and prospects. And we're there to solve problems that are worth solving, that will have real business outcomes that the customer cares about. And I think AI can help us show up and focus the conversation on that much faster and much more effectively. Another thing that we're seeing that AI can do, because let's face it, the buyer's more expects to do more self-service research, and doesn't want to just depend on a person, wants to leverage the person when they need the person, but also wants to do their own research on their own. So how can I set up digitally enabled content that's accessible to the buyer 7x24 without human intervention? And then based on how they consume that content, use AI to predict what might help them facilitate a positive decision with more content. So it's really cool to see how that back end of supporting the prospect, which is rarely a single person today. It's almost always a team of people that all have their own agendas, their own wants, their own desires, their own prejudices, their own expectations, to self-service some of that content and use AI to make sure that we're giving them the right information.
Yeah, so even though times are turbulent, it does seem like, we got new technologies, new ways of doing things, new things for productivity to really turn it around. And Julie, I've done this keynote multiple times over the years about selling in turbulent times, and one thing always remains the same. Whatever advice I've heard or given, it's advice that, if you take a second to think back, is, that would be good advice whether it's turbulent or not. Isn't that funny?
No question. It's just that when times are turbulent, when times are uncertain, if we're not doing this as intentionally as when times are good and cash is flowing, it becomes the risk to us as a sales professional becomes that much more critical, because when we're in times of crisis and the buyer is more risk averse, the opportunities are slimmer. And
yeah, the
so
consequences are higher.
exactly. And so the buying is not as abundant as when it is smooth sailing And people are okay accepting a little more or tolerating a little more risk in their business decisions. But you're right. All of these are practices that apply to all times. I think they just become heightened in times of uncertainty. And it doesn't even have to be a crisis like COVID was. It doesn't have to be a crisis like maybe some of the economic impact that certain industries are feeling right now. Um, but it does change how companies behave and the people in companies make decisions.
Great points. I could talk to you all day, Julie. So tell us a little about yourself, for our listeners.
Great. Well, I lead Value Selling Associates, and we're one of the world's premier sales methodologies that companies across the globe deploy to improve their revenue outcomes and sales productivity. Carlos has been a part of that team for a number of years and brings the value selling framework and all our related programs to his clients around the globe, and is one of our masters and role models within the organization that we look up to. But through that, I have the opportunity to work with clients around the globe in a multitude of different industries, as well as professionals who have caught the entrepreneur bug that want to become certified in selling and delivering value selling, aka just like Carlos has over the years, and bringing our framework to their networks, to their clients, and into their markets. So it's a ton of fun to really kind of be that catalyst for people and organizations to transform themselves and achieve results they never thought were possible. And really that's the business that we're in with revenue teams.
Excellent. It's been a great journey, and I hope it continues on for many years. Julie, what's your 1% edge? What have you been working on these days to get 1% better every day?
I think I'm a professional development junkie, and I think it is my quest to continue to learn, whether it's reading books, listening to podcasts, newsletters. I try to learn something every day. Some of it might just be fun, but some of it I think are things that I can apply in business and how I lead our organization and manage our team, as well as how I can continue to add value to the clients and customers that I have the good fortune to work with directly. It's constant learning. The second I think I've learned it all, I know, stick a fork in me, the juices will be running clear and I'm done. And I think it's constant learning, constant self-assessment of where I can get better, and then really thriving on that. How do I continually reinvent ourselves?
Love that growth mindset. And I recommend it to everyone. I think that's awesome. All right, Julie, if people want to get a hold of you or learn more about Value Selling Associates, what's the best way for them to reach out?
I'm not hard to find, Carlos. So Julie Thomas, Value Selling on LinkedIn. Please connect with me. Would love to have a conversation with you. Our website is valueselling.com. We've got all kinds of great resources on there. And if you go to the get to know our team, you'll find my direct contact information, as well as that of many of our associates, including Carlos's direct contact information on there as well. So I'd love to hear from you. And lastly, as Carlos mentioned, I wrote a book. It was published just under 2 years ago, The Power of Value Selling. You can pick it up wherever books are sold, Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, which is a great primer on our philosophy and go-to-market approach with the value selling framework.
Excellent. Thank you, Julie. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Love it, Carlos. Thanks for having me. Now go to the gym.
I need to go today. All right, folks, that does it for this week's episode. If you found value in our conversation, please comment back, subscribe. We really appreciate your support. Until next time, I wish you nothing but the greatest success. Have a great day. Thanks, Julie.
Thank you.